Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Justice and Pieces guest speaker series. Today, we are joined by Aivrey and Lesha, who are co-founders of the Canadian Law Review. And so, first of all, thanks for both of you for joining us. And let's maybe start with you, Aivrey. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your interest in law and where you're at right now.
Hi, thanks for having me. I went to McMaster for my undergrad. I was in the Justice, Political Philosophy, and Law program. And then right now, I'm just finishing up an internship with Canuck Sports and Entertainment to kind of look into what it would be like working for an NHL team. And I really enjoy it so far. I'm mainly interested in sports law, so I'm hoping to pursue that, but I'm also really interested in other areas of law, often I think inspired by moot court. So I'm thinking of maybe going to a school that might kind of have a bit of a wide range of classes and opportunities for me to pursue there. Basically, Canadian Law Review was inspired by experiential learning, which is something that Lesha and I experienced together through moot court. We met through doing moot competitions in our undergrad, and we saw how empowering it can be to engage with legal discourse and be able to express your thoughts about it with a panel of judges, and then also being able to kind of look at the law and be able to kind of create like a debate about it within the discourse. So inspired by that, we thought about creating a national undergraduate legal journal, which is what Canadian Law Review is. So it's a not-for-profit, and it's a intergenerational mentorship program which aims to empower post-secondary students to contribute to legal academia. And many aspects of the journal are based off of law school journals, for example, the citations that we use, and then also the editorial structure and the review process.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Aivrey. And Lesha, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about yourself and tell us a little bit more about the law review.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and hello, everyone. My name is Lesha. I am currently finishing up my third year of my undergrad in political science at McMaster University. I am a co-founder and the current executive director of the Canadian Law Review. I am involved in a few pre-law organizations as well as political organizations, such as the McMaster Mooting Society, the Moot Law Society of Canada, and the Canadian Council of Young Feminists, which have all informed my interests in law and advocacy. Working in the political campaign space, specifically campaign finance, I realized just exactly how ubiquitous our legal system is. And the law is present in nearly every aspect of our lives and is very complex and powerful. And so my interests and goals in research and work is to understand the complexities and nuances associated within the legal system that so often work in symbiosis with structures of power that define and regulate our individual interests. And so planning to pursue law school seemed like the logical next step for me. And as Aivrey mentioned, we actually met competing with the McMaster Moot team just last year, actually. This experience shaped our passion for oral advocacy in creating access to justice through creating opportunities to elevate students' legal literacy who are also passionate about the law. Our experience with the McMaster Mooting Society was truly a transformative one in our undergraduate journeys. And so seeing ourselves as well as our teammates close the gap between the advocates we all started as and the advocates we always dreamt of being by fostering our legal research, analytical, and public speaking skills was both inspiring and empowering. But we quickly realized that for students who do not wish to apply their legal research through oral advocacy or pursue careers involving litigation, this may not have the same impact as it did for us. And written advocacy is just as powerful. And when it comes to the actual practice of law, many times judges base their judgments on the written submissions before even hearing oral submissions. And so we found that exposure to written advocacy as well as legal scholarship is something that needs to have more exposure at the undergraduate level as well. And so this is what kind of formed the idea for CLR. And following that came the community support. And so the Canadian Law Review was born.
Perfect. So let's maybe kind of unpack a little bit more about the CLR. So Avery, maybe you could tell us a little bit more. I know Lesha just talked a bit about how you met, but tell us a little bit more about your inspiration there for creating this and founding this, and kind of what the journey has been thus far.
Yeah, so I think it was, I think a big part of it was mentorship, because at McMaster Moot, we had law school students teaching us how to moot, and we found that really empowering and transformative. I remember my first practice with the moot team. I wasn't anywhere near what I was on competition day in terms of performance or even understanding of the law. So being able to see how you can get from point A to point B with the help of a mentor, I found was just very empowering. And we thought about what this would be like if it translated into legal writing and legal research. So that's kind of where the mentorship aspect of CLR came in, which I think is what makes the journal especially unique, because it's ran by law school students. So our senior editorial board is all JD candidates, and then we have our advisory board made up of lawyers, and then even our editorial board is a lot of PhD candidates, and then master students as well, and then a couple of exceptional undergraduate students too. So anyone who's really interested in pursuing a legal career, they're kind of connected through mentorship in our legal journal. And it's all made up of students who are really passionate about the law and just engaging in legal academia as well. And it provides an opportunity for students to learn a bit more about what it would be like to be on a law school journal without actually having to be in law school yet.
Now, Lesha, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about kind of what inspired you to join here. I know you touched on this already, but and you could tell us a little bit more about some of the other things. I know there's so much that your organization is doing already, and you could tell us a little bit more about some of those projects.
For sure. Aivrey really did hit all the big notes on how we started this, why we started it, and what exactly we're doing. But I will add that a big part of actually now starting it is that we're seeing that there is still a gap within academic scholarship. And so what we're really interested in doing is further closing this gap within legal discourse itself, which is often exclusive to legal scholars themselves. And while we want to do this, we also want to elevate the level of legal literacy of students entering law school, and by doing so, actively contribute towards access to justice by creating a stronger pool of legal scholars and advocates. And on this note, I would like to note that access to justice, as we've mentioned, I think a few times now, is our foremost founding pillar. And on this basis, after kind of seeing the progress that we've made just in our inaugural year, we found that we wanted to take it a step further. And so we decided to initiate a new project called the Canadian Access to Justice Project. And so access to justice, of course, can be achieved in many different ways, one of which can be done through the sharing of resources and opportunities, including the various experiential learning opportunities in the journal itself. And CLR is committed to removing these systemic barriers for disadvantaged youth who are interested in entering the legal profession but face these barriers. And we find that diminished access to professional development opportunities such as these ones, and by extension, economic opportunities, really reinforces the poverty trap and undermines human potential and inclusive growth. And so we wanted to have a whole organization that would work towards alleviating these barriers further. And so we started the Canadian Access to Justice Project, which is a nonpartisan charitable organization that supports Canadian youth to shape Canada's legal and policy landscape through innovative projects and campaigns to address systemic issues in the profession itself, as well as the legal system as a whole. As we're looking to promote domestic, legal, and public policy dialogue with relevant stakeholders, community partners, and other stakeholders, that support the CLR community in turning knowledge into action and action into knowledge.
Now, maybe Avery, you can tell us a bit more about, certainly the importance there of mentorship, and there's the different levels, right? You mentioned there's lawyers involved, there's law students involved, there's undergraduate students, master students. So kind of how did this, all of this kind of come together in terms of, you had this idea, and what can you share in terms of how things have developed thus far, and certainly what's to come over the next year as well?
Yeah, for sure. So it kind of started with Lesha and I just having one of our late night chats. We got so used to talking to each other every day, just getting ready for moot competitions. We just kind of kept it going even after the competitions were over. So we were just having a chat about how moot court for some reason is one of the few opportunities out there for students to really engage and sort of show their interest in the legal sphere and getting involved in law school related activities. So we started talking about how there wasn't anything for a legal journal, and then we started like jotting down all these notes, like, oh well, if there was one, this is what it would look like this is what would be good, this is what I would want to be involved in. And then we thought, okay, well, we're just a couple of undergraduate students. What do we know? So then we reached out to a couple of law school students, and actually the first people that we talked to about the idea told us, no, like I don't think people would be interested in this. So we felt a little bit like discouraged from that, because we thought, oh well, we thought this was such a good idea. And then we kept talking about it, and we were like, you know what, like we're really passionate about it. Let's talk to someone else. So then I reached out to someone who's one of our first advisors, Danny. He was a mentor for me in a different organization, Han Voice. So I was giving him a call, and just we were talking about law school stuff, and then also volunteering things with Han Voice. And then I kind of mentioned the idea to him, like on a whim, just kind of like, oh yeah, and I'm also thinking about something like this. Like, what do you think about a legal journal? And he was like, well, I was the editor-in-chief of the Ottawa Law Review. I think that's an excellent idea, and I'd be happy to help you out with anything you need. I can kind of teach you what a law review would kind of look like, and then provide any sort of insights and answer any questions you might have. So then after hearing, from such a qualified person about of him thinking that Canadian Law Review was a really good idea, we had this like great sense of encouragement. We were just like, oh my gosh, like we have to get this started. So then we started talking to other people who were law school students. So not a lawyer, but law school students. And they thought it was a great idea. And then also based on the people that we know in the pre-law community, we thought, yeah, like this is definitely a good idea. This is something that people would sign up for, because we would sign up for it. We would, go in and definitely try to get into the legal journal too. So we just started kind of having conversations with lawyers and then senior editors who are the JD students, and then asking, hey, like, do you want to be a part of this? And most of the answers were yes. So that was really exciting. And then it got to the point where advisors were like, you know what, like or not advisors, but lawyers were just like, oh, like I don't have the capacity to advise on this right now. My plate is full, but why don't I send your document and your proposal along to a couple of other lawyers? And then it got to the point where we actually had to start turning people away because we got so much interest from it. So that's kind of how it was born. And then in terms of where we're headed, we're hoping to expand the journal and then have as many sort of issues published as possible. But we also have very high standards for what we allow to be published, because we are kind of going off of what law schools are doing with their journals, which is why we have the JD students running it. So we're hoping to create even more legal scholarship being published by undergrad students. So that's kind of the direction we're going. And then with the Access to Justice project, we want to create more opportunities for students to be involved with sort of like community social impact initiatives as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Aivrey. Lesha, can you tell us maybe a bit more of kind of the process there? I mean, of people making submissions and what's going to hopefully be published, and sort of when the publication is happening, and any kind of more details about that, and how undergraduate students who may be listening or may stumble upon this one day and think, hey, I want to get involved, or what can you share with them?
Yeah, for sure. So our structure kind of operates the same as a law school journal, with the only difference being the application for the mentees. So we open up application for mentees as well as the editorial board in the end of summer. So this year will be around August, but the exact date will be posted on our website, which is canadianlawreview.ca. So we'll accept applications until mid-September for mentees. And the application really just consists of a resume, a writing sample, and then sometimes we'll include a couple prompts if they're completely optional. But generally a pretty short application, because we found very quickly this year that the review process for our team also it's quite lengthy. So we're looking to minimize that, which is always a positive thing for people who are looking to apply. And then we will accept mentees by mid-October, and then the mentorship process starts. They get introduced to their advisors as well as their senior editor, and then they kind of take it from there. And then it's there's like kind of a period until February. We have orientation. We do the onboarding for all the associate and assistant editors around January, December. So those applications will remain open until December if you're looking to get involved with those tiers of the editorial structure. And then after that, these final submissions from the mentees are due mid-February, I believe, if I'm recalling correctly. Yeah, Aivrey's nodding. So yeah. And then we have the first round of edits with the assistant editors, and then it goes to the associates, and then the final is with the senior editors who give the final yes or no approval. It starts with senior editors who will take a read over the submission and just give it a yes or no. Are we going to consider it further? And they also have the final say. And then there's a blackout period until we get it, all of the operations team kind of like working on making the volume look nice and making sure it can go on the website. And then we have a very exciting virtual banquet that we're planning for May. And then that will be the volume launch. And then we'll do it again next year.
Perfect. So you're looking then, Aivrey, then end of May that they'll be ready to go and post it, I guess, on your website. Is any sort of preview there of kind of what are the sort of topics you're looking to have published there, or is that something that we'll find out in June?
It's definitely something you'll find out in June, but what I can tell you is it's from different areas of law. That's the really cool thing about our journal, is we really seeked out a diverse sort of board of advisors and senior editors that are interested in all kinds of different areas, especially even with the mentees too. So I can say that there will definitely be something published in the area of entertainment law, and then also Indigenous law. And then there should be something around like criminal and constitutional law as well.
And Lesha, I mean, speaking of the diversity, in terms of where you found, I mean, I know you're both students who went to or are at McMaster right now, respectively. Where did you kind of see the interest from, I mean, in both on the law school side and on the undergraduate side? And I guess just to confirm, it's what's going to be published are written by undergraduate students. So anything you can kind of share about those who are involved and kind of, you probably were got a lot of people from across, I don't know if across the country, but that have made submissions. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so when we were first growing the organization about a year now, actually almost a year, end of April, we actually were lucky enough to have the moot court experience. So we were already engaging in national moot court competitions. So we already had personal networks of people kind of coast to coast who were already interested in pre-law and these kind of opportunities. So we kind of knew where that outreach should kind of take us, and to kind of spread like the message of like, here's a new opportunity, here's what we're doing. And just kind of through word of mouth and social media, I kind of grew in that capacity. So we're pretty lucky to kind of have the geographical diversity that we're looking for. We really wanted this to be coast to coast, and we officially did it. And we were like, the day that happened, we were ecstatic. It was, we have a map on our website, on our homepage. If you scroll to the bottom, and you can kind of see like a pin of where everyone is or where most people are. So we are fortunate enough to have a very diverse group in terms of location, but also in other identities. That was something we put a big emphasis on wherever we could. We did, again, for the same reason, try as much as possible to do blind review. So everything on the editorial side is blind review. On the operations side, it's a little different because we have to do interviews. I'm not sure if this is something that's going to change for the editorial side. I know there is some talk about maybe imposing an interview requirement for mentees or something like that. But we thought it was really, really important that we have that kind of diversity, especially in this kind of space and in law, and trying to be as inclusive as possible and trying to really be a champion of these values, and trying to contribute to access to justice. Again, we thought that this was one of the big ways that we needed to do this in our hiring practices.
Perfect. So Aivrey, now both of you have mentioned, maybe we can switch gears a little bit here. And I know I found out just from chatting with you, and I remember actually some of the names there from competitions my students competed in. I know you've had tremendous success, both of you, in mooting, and that's how you met and this came about. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about, the importance of mooting, what you learned from that experience, and certainly we can start with you, Aivrey.
Okay, sure. I mean, I was always really afraid of public speaking as a kid and in high school and even a little bit in undergrad. So the fact that I eventually kind of moved into a space where I was talking to a huge panel of judges, and they were all asking me questions about the law, and I was like ready to fire back and give them answers. I think that was a really it was a really great opportunity for me to kind of grow as a person and as an advocate, and realize that courtroom sort of litigation is something that I think I would actually really enjoy going forward. So I think it's a really great opportunity for students to get involved with. I think even if you're not sure if you want to go into law, or even if you don't, you might be interested in something else, I think it's a really great sort of learning opportunity. I know my partner, my moot partner, she was in health sciences at McMaster, and she wasn't really sure if she ever wanted to do law, but then after doing moot court, she decided to apply to law school, and then maybe consider doing that as well. So I think it's something that is definitely worth trying, and I think even though it's a little scary at first for some people, it's definitely a set of skills that you can build and you can use with you wherever you go. I know interviewing for the job that I have now with the Canucks, I think my skills that I built through moot really helped me out with that, and being able to kind of speak on the spot. I think that's a skill you should have everywhere you go. So I found that really empowering. And then also I really like the community of people that I met through it too. It's a lot of people who are kind of interested in the same thing, and everyone's really friendly. And at competitions, it's kind of like when you're the student and you're being judged, you're going through the same thing as the other side. So afterwards, it's always nice to kind of have a little chat. I mean, mine was virtual, so it was in a breakout room, but still it was nice to kind of say like, oh, good job to the other team, and they're like, oh my gosh, like you answered this question really well, and I was like, no, like I was so nervous to go up against you, you were so good. So I really like the camaraderie part of it as well. I would definitely recommend moot court for anyone, really.
And Lesha, how about you? What was that experience like for you? And I know you're obviously it's not in the past because you're still competing, I think, there in your third year. So what have you gained from that?
Yeah, a lot of my experiences are very similar to Aivrey's, and I am still competing. I'm fortunate enough to happily have stumbled across it completely by accident in the end of my first year, back when it was still in person, the 2020 Osgood Cup. Didn't know what it was. My partner and I, my only pre-law friend at the time, just like found Osgood Cup, like, wait, like Osgood is a law school. That's pretty cool. And then we searched up moot court, like never heard of that. Seemed pretty cool. We signed up. We had no idea what it was. We're like, we're going to go, we're going to learn, we're going to see what this is. Maybe we'll like it. Regardless, it looks good in our applications and maybe it'll get us somewhere. We went our first round. We had one of the scariest judges in our first round, who now is actually like, I would consider like a friend. And anytime I have her in a moot court round, which I have recently at the past Cap Cup, is a great experience. But again, for a new mooter, terrifying. But as terrifying as it was such a fun experience. Even going in with no training, no prior experience. To be quite honest, we didn't even read the case, so we weren't completely sure if we were supposed to. Like, there's a memo. We read the memo, we'll go, we'll have fun. But that quickly changed when we funded the moot club at McMaster, and we managed to get Jen Loristani to coach us. And that really was the pivotal moment for us kind of going forward. And that was kind of, again, the basis for CLR. So I think everything is so interconnected, which is so interesting to look at in retrospect. I actually had the opposite experience with Aivrey. I was always kind of into public speaking. I grew up in debate, Model UN. It was always something I was comfortable with, enjoyed doing, which I suppose is why I enjoyed not knowing anything in my first moot competition. But moot court is quite daunting, even when you are kind of getting the adequate training. And again, I was trained by Jen Lorisani, who puts that emphasis on legal knowledge. So it's that much more daunting and terrifying. But when you get to kind of understand and get your groove and understand that case and get to the competition or even practice, it's a very like empowering experience, and it's so much fun, and it's at the end of the day a wonderful experience, and everyone is just so happy and grateful to be there. So it's even the more fun with a team. But I would second, like, the skills that you receive from moot court are like very unique, and the way you kind of pick up on interview skills and kind of the community that you built, as Aivrey mentioned, is very unique, because I think mooters are unique from like debaters or anything else like that, because they all kind of have that same sense of community that I haven't personally found in other areas. And in conversation with a lot of mooters, they're like, this community is very, very unique. Everyone is so driven. Everyone is so dedicated and invested in what they're doing. So it's really just great to be around everyone who's involved. But it also makes you a better student. It makes you a better writer, a better, you just understand maybe your readings better. That was experience for me. A lot of the teammates that I've talked to this about. But really the emphasis on the community, I think, is like one of the biggest takeaways personally. And I think that was even more so for me, because during the start of our club, we were invited to come and sit on the Moot Law Society of Canada as a member delegate. And we've been there for about a year or two now. And so now we kind of chair, like the school chairs the committee, and it's been a really great experience. And just a little bit more background on Moot Law Society of Canada. It is an organization of most of the moot schools in Canada. We've also helped a couple of the newer schools kind of set up their competitions and set up their teams there and get them involved in mooting. But it is an organization for all these teams and all these schools to come together and advocate for what their teams and what their schools want moot court competitions to look like, and create a national scale standard for moot, ranging from qualifying and rules and how the operations of moot will go to a certain degree. As well as the scoring rubric and the score algorithm. And what's really interesting about the score rubric is now there is an equal emphasis on legal knowledge, which is very important, as every school agreed on, which is great for law aspiring students, because then it'll just turn into a public speaking competition. And now a year out, seeing that the impact that changing the rubric in this way has had, and the experience that everyone's had with kind of having to understand the law and the precedent and the policy implications, and kind of have a more full package, has been very rewarding, very positive. And hopefully we get to continue doing this in the future.
That's actually funny. I had students competing, and Jen Lorisani was their judge, and you're just talking about terrifying. They, I think, are still probably terrified if they see her as a result of that first experience mooting. But maybe you could tell us some tips here, Aivrey, in terms of getting. Especially because you're saying, look, I'm not this public speaker initially. I wasn't interested in doing all of this. And then I started mooting and certainly achieved the success that you have. What can you share for those who are looking to get into mooting or mooting for the first time, in terms of what's worked for you in getting to competition day and thriving?
Sure. So I think the first thing that I usually do when I get a case is I read the briefs on Wikipedia, which I don't know if that's actually good advice for everybody, but that's what I do. So I get kind of like a gist of what it might be about. And then what I do is I read the case over and over again. I make sort of like a table of contents to kind of organize, certain parts of the case, saying, okay, like this is the appellant's first point. This is the appellant's second point. Okay, like this is what the respondent will say to that. And then what you realize is, as you're reading the case, is it's basically the judges kind of responding to each other on either side, right? So I think making a point of marking that down and figuring out the points of contention versus like the points that everybody concedes on and everyone agrees on is really important. And also I recommend just reading the case over and over, because the first time you read it will be very different from the sixth time that you read it, just because you see different things every single time you read it. It's like looking at a very like big complex painting. You can't take it all in at once. You got to kind of focus on certain things first to really understand what's happening. And then also in terms of the speaking part, this is something that I still definitely struggle with, but something that I want to continue working on, especially if I end up going into law. I think one thing that really helped me is just learning sort of the conversational aspect of it, learning that the judges actually want to have a conversation with you, even though I know in undergrad moot, they kind of come across as they're attacking you, but that's not the case. It's just that they're so excited they want to hear more. So kind of changing your perspective and, away from sort of, oh, like, your point doesn't make any sense to me, to no, explain that to me. Like, I want it to make sense to me, like that. Changing the perspective on that, I think, made a really big difference, because when I was practicing with Jen as my coach, for the first competition that I did, at first she was just kind of like, why are you saying that? And I was like, oh my God, like, why is this person yelling at me? Like, what's going on? But no, like, she wanted to know where I got the information from that was coming out of my mouth, so she could look at it and say, oh wait, but in this case it says something else. Why should I side with you? So it's kind of to get more into the conversation of it. So I think like changing your perspective on that and thinking, oh, this is just a conversation with people for why you should side with me and not my friends, and kind of you start to have more fun with it too when it becomes a conversation. So I'd say like that would that's something that really helped me, like realizing that it's not actually it's not meant to intimidate you, it's meant to challenge you.
And Lesha, how about you? What could you offer for us in terms of, you mentioned certainly background in model UN and debating. How's that different? How's this different than that? And what would you share, if anything, different than what Aivrey's already pointed out in terms of your preparation?
Oh, I was for sure, as a debater, as someone in Model UN, very shocked going into moot court. It is different in almost every way besides the public speaking aspect, but it's different and better in every way. Once you get into like the groove of it. First, you don't have people interrupting you and asking you questions. A lot of judges like to yell, and it's starting to get to a point where it's fun now. So that's good. It's development, but in terms of advice, beyond what Aivrey said, I'm still with my team here, so I can only say too much before they get mad at me. But I do think it's really, really important for you to be comfortable with your submissions enough to move around. So if a judge asks you a question that takes you a different part of your submission, you need to get there and know how to get out of that to go back into your submissions. And that might be a different point in your submissions, but that's really important. And you'd be surprised that judges really pick up on that. So being able to transition in and out of your submissions and have the policy and have case law to back everything up is really, really important, especially now with an emphasis on legal knowledge. And it's also just a lot of fun. Like, actually, Justice, if I could take you to this case, it says the exact opposite. So, and then back to my submission, which also supports this position. It's fun and it will score you all the points that you need.
Now, Aivrey, I mean, I guess on the last thing here is, if you do, with that experience there with Jen, or those judges that have the tough questions that that seem that they're attacking you, anything that you can share about how to answer that and not get nervous and continue on?
Honestly, I still get nervous and I just kind of like power through. Like, if my voice is shaking, I try to make it stop. But I think the most important thing is preparation, because if you start asking yourself those hard questions before the judges do, you're not hearing it for the first time. So you'll actually have a response prepared. Or if you know the case well enough, I truly believe that no matter what a judge asks you, you will be able to answer to, because you have enough knowledge, you have like your toolbox, you have everything you need. So whenever I got kind of thrown, a curveball sort of question that I didn't expect or had trouble understanding, at my first listen to it, I thought about the keywords that they were throwing at me, what are they trying to understand? And then I think about what I know, and then I'm like, okay, well, this is how I want to pose this to the judge, so that way they'll side with me. and then I would answer. But in terms of nerves, I don't know. I don't think it's something that should stop you from doing it, because even if your voice is a little bit shaky, if what you're saying is compelling, they usually take that into account. So I wouldn't get too caught up on it. Definitely try to polish up, but I think the content is the most important thing.
And Leisha, anything more from you before your teammates are probably going to cut your mic off here? Anything else you can share about dealing with answering? I think that's probably the most difficult. At least my students tell me that we can prepare and then we can have our points and we know what we're going to say, and then like 9 seconds in, a judge is going to interrupt and say, "Well, what about this?" And you're completely thrown off. What can you share about that?
Honestly, just be confident. If the judge can sense that you're a little nervous, they're going to attack you. So just kind of stand your ground. You know this case, you've been preparing for it for a month. I don't know how rigorous all the schools prepare, but you know this case better than the judge a lot of times. So just keeping that in mind and just standing your ground is really important. And we'll score you oral advocacy, legal knowledge, and professionalism points every single time.
Perfect. So I think maybe kind of to close off here, I think it's certainly important that you're all involved. You're both involved in mooting and in creating the CLR, and then certainly other things that maybe we get a chance to talk about as much here. But what can you share in terms of coming up with an idea and being there's even for lawyers and paralegals and law students, there's this feeling of imposter syndrome. Like, what am I going to do? Who am I to do something? And I can only imagine being an undergraduate student. I mean, when I was an undergraduate student, I mean, we were only thinking about where we're going out on Thursday night. Where kind of you got that motivation, and how did you kind of, maybe you could share with other undergraduate students or any students really who may be feeling, hey, I have this great idea, and you shared, the first person you went to, a law student, was like, I don't know if that's going to work, and you continued on with it. Anything you can kind of share with the students about, if they have an idea or they want to be involved in things, to kind of not sort of doubt yourself and go ahead and do it. Aivrey, we'll start with you.
I think one big part of it is making sure that you're asking the right person for what they think about your idea, because the first person we went to, I don't know if they had very much journal experience, but the second person that we went to, he was the editor-in-chief at one point. So I think a big part of it is asking the right person. And then also, I think a lot of great ideas may have been dismissed at one point or another. I'm sure when someone thought, oh, let's host the first undergraduate moot competition, I'm sure was at least one person who was just like, oh, I don't think someone would be interested in that. And then sure enough, there's a whole community now. So I think it's really important to just kind of have that confidence from within about your own ideas, and knowing, well, you know what, if I think this is such a good idea and I know people that are kind of similar to me might think the same thing, then I should just keep trying. And, you can definitely take any sort of negative feedback that you get and kind of make tweaks if you see fit, but just make sure you're asking the right people, and then also staying true to what you know, because even if you're young, you do have life experience too. You have tried your own new things. In my case, it's like I have a degree, so I don't think it's fair to write yourself off so quickly if one person tells you, oh, this isn't the greatest idea. I think you should give yourself more of a chance than that.
And Lesha, anything to add there from your perspective?
Yeah, so the imposter syndrome is something that Aivrey and I talk about all the time, and it's not something that's completely gone. I don't know if it'll ever completely be gone, but there are definitely ways to overcome it. For us, the big thing was that, we were an undergrad, or at the time, Aivrey now is a recent grad. So we kind of had a lot less experience than the people that we were reaching out to for help, the law students, the lawyers. So it was a weird balance that we were trying to strike there. And also, as women of color in this space, it was coupled with being an undergraduate student, it made that even the more daunting. But then kind of looking at, what have you done, who's involved, and what's needed in this space, it kind of is like, okay, like this is needed, like the work that we're doing is working. And then you kind of continue on. So kind of what I would say to anyone listening is like, don't be scared of rejection or even judgment, and don't let that stop you from pursuing your interests and bringing your ideas to life. As Aivrey mentioned, like when we were starting this, we were told that an idea like this was simply unrealistic and would generate no interest. And this was from someone who was at the time supposed to be a mentor. But we were passionate enough to continue on to embark on this journey. And it has been the most rewarding journey. So if you have an idea, if you have a passion, do not underestimate yourself or your ability. You might just surprise yourself. I know we certainly did.
Perfect. So thank you both of you for taking the time and joining us here today. Perhaps maybe you could end with any final words of wisdom, and there's some really great wisdom there from both of you already, but anything to wrap up, and congratulations on making it through your first year there. Looking forward to seeing the issue there in June, and certainly all the other projects to come. And congratulations again. Certainly it is something that you should be very proud of launching and founding and getting off the ground. And certainly once you do it, you can only build on it. It provides opportunities for people all across the country and undergraduate students that, if you didn't put this together, that they wouldn't have had an outlet. So congratulations again for both of you. And Aivrey, any final words of wisdom? And then we'll go to you, Lesha, after.
Sure. Thank you so much. I think what I'll say is, don't let the fear of rejection or failure stop you from trying at all. I would say 99% of the things that I'm the most proud of, I had like a certain risk factor into it, whether it was trying out for the varsity swim team, trying out for the moot team, creating CLR, any sort of thing that I am the most proud of. I also had a little bit of fear and anxiety attached to that. So what I'll say is just don't let that stop you.
And Lesha gets to get the final word here.
I would say get involved in your community and the spaces that you're interested in and passionate about. And you just getting involved in these communities, you just need to know that you belong and are deserving of these opportunities. And if CLR is a community that you're interested in, please apply, please get involved. And if CLR isn't for you, that's totally fine as well. There's so many organizations out there where you can get involved and demonstrate your interests and your contributions. And just make sure you take that initiative, because that step towards your future can be a transformative one.
Perfect. So once again, thank you both for taking the time and joining us here today. And thanks for everyone for listening. Take care, everyone.